Hello there, you're watching Reality Check Friday Report. I'm Maha Siddiqui. This summer was particularly harrowing for Indian students who were headed to the West for the fall semester. The visas were delayed for many and there was an overall chaotic situation. One among those countries was the UK. The UK tried to address concerns and shorten the wait times, but complaints remained galore. As for many, it turned out to be a last-minute affair. UK says the visas issued to Indian students and Indian skilled workers was the highest. 45% of all our skilled worker visas now go to the Indians, is what the UK High Commissioner to India has said. But now, this issue of migration and mobility is spilling into the trade deal negotiations between India and the UK. The UK Home Secretary believes that she will not be able to back Prime Minister Liz Truss on the deal with India if it advocates an open border policy for migration for India. This, as she says, Indians remain the highest in number who overstay. The Indian High Commission in London has responded to the charge, saying that India is committed to facilitating the return of citizens who've overstayed and looked into the cases handed over to the High Commission in London. So why this charge at a time when the two sides are struggling to meet the Diwali deadline to seal the trade deal? Are Indians not welcome in the UK? That's the question we pose this evening on Reality Check Friday Report. Let me now go across straight to our guests who are joining us here on the show. Virendra Sharma, Labour MP, will be joining us in a bit. Nicholas Nugent, UK journalist and former BBC editor, here with us on the show. Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat. Adarsh Khandelwal, CEO Collegify, admissions consulting firm. And Jayant Krishna, CEO Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, former group CEO, UK India Business Council. Let me first go across to Nick. Nick, the UK Home Secretary says that this is not what the UK voted for in Brexit, an open border sort of policy. But when Brexit happened, then the refrain from the UK was that now it doesn't need to prioritize EU nationals, so chances of Indian doctors and engineers making the cut would be easier. Was that not a true depiction of what was to come?
Well, you're better informed on this topic than I am, but what I want to explain to you is that our government has been in power for 1 month, and frankly, they haven't got their act together in many ways. You might have noticed that we've had quite an economic crisis or a crisis of confidence in the government over the last month. Measures to do with taxation and such forth have been absolutely the priority. So I don't think I'm revealing any hidden secrets when I tell you that the Prime Minister really hasn't got her head around many issues, and perhaps this is one of them. After all, she inherited a pledge by Boris Johnson to get a free trade agreement with India sorted by Diwali. Whether she knows that, whether she's conscious of that, is a little bit difficult to tell, because her mind has been so much on, firstly, the party conference, where she got a lot of criticism from her MPs. And then yesterday she was in Europe trying to build fences, I would say, or build rebuild relations with some of our European colleagues that were badly damaged when we left Europe. So what I'm really telling you is that she has a lot on her plate, and she possibly hasn't even had the time to sit down with the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, to discuss the impact of a free trade agreement and the detail here and there, whereas perhaps Ms. Braverman has given more attention to it because it's one of the central issues with her.
Adarsh Khandelwal, I want to come to you because you've just got off consulting students heading to many countries, including UK. What has been your experience? Do the processes give a sense that these students are welcome, that the Indians are welcome?
Absolutely. I think, for the student welfare, the delays, the lag has obviously created a lot of chaos currently, right? I mean, with 118,000 students getting processed. So UK's viewpoint is very clear that, they are welcoming students. There is 100% acceptance of all the visas. There is hardly any rejection which has happened. And primarily the focus from the UK point is that, India consists, there is a very large number of Indian students studying in the UK. So, topics like this obviously affect the sentiment, right, of an Indian student or a family who's here, investing so much money. If you just look at the number, the investment is quite high. So yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a chaotic year with so much going on in the UK. I think, they have to think straight from a political viewpoint, whether they require the immigrants to sort of work, because there is a clear demand. The number of with also the the broadband requirement in terms of how they want to fulfill it. They have to bring in the technical skills and the technical skill sets to sort of require the need. So I mean, I think from a government viewpoint, at least to just maintain an emotional quotient at a positive scenario, there has to be a more equality stand from a student perspective.
Okay. Ashok Sajjanar, you've been part of some negotiations of this nature during your tenure as a diplomat. Does this issue have the potential to be a deal breaker, or is it just a niggling factor that can be easily settled?
It's an important issue, Maha, that I would definitely say. I don't think it's just a niggling issue, but let me make 2 points, if I may, in the discussions that we've already had. Number one is, when the Home Secretary says that the idea was not to have a free agreement, free migration, I don't think anyone is looking for free migration at all. And FTA does not call for free migration. When in the FTA, Indians, either whether it is students or professionals or otherwise or tourists, they will not have the same rights that the Europeans had when UK was a part of the European Union. I think we need to recognize that. So I think that is where Ms. Braverman is making a huge mistake, that the borders are not going to be free. They are going to, people who are going to be traveling from here, they are going to be professionals, whether IT professionals or otherwise. They will go, they will render their services in the United Kingdom, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, 3 years. They have a job in India, they will come back. So, what we are talking about are these people who go for limited immigration, that they are not going to go and stay there. And this is, I think, where the mistake is made when, if this argument is made that Indians stay over time, etc., overstay their visa tenure and duration. These are not the skilled people. These are maybe, tourists who go there or otherwise who are trying to get into that. And that is an entirely different cup of tea altogether. The second point, Maha, that I could make here is that when students go there, students from India are being courted, are being invited by around the world. You have seen whether it is, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they will come, they will have their fare because they want Indian students to come because they are paying students, they are full paying students. And when particularly you have all these as far as the economies are concerned, they are, they want money, and students are the best way to, both tuition fees and living there. And the last point that I would make is, whether Ms. Truss knows about this Diwali deadline or not. She definitely knows the Diwali deadline because she was the trade secretary. She was the one who was negotiating, and Mr. Boris Johnson would definitely have consulted her before making this announcement that we are going to get a deal by Diwali.
Okay. All right. Jayant Krishna, mobility, migration, immigrants, automobiles, service sector, there are many issues that remain pending. Is the task cut out for both sides now to meet this Diwali commitment?
Yeah, I would say, most of the negotiations for the free trade agreement have already happened, Maha. In fact, I had a meeting with Liz Truss when she was the Secretary for International Trade last year in Delhi. And, she was very committed to the deal. And let's be very clear, under the FTA between UK and India, nobody is even talking about an open border policy for India. That's for Indians. That's not the case at all. If at all, it's a little more liberal visa regime, But fundamentally, I think, UK as a country has to understand that Indians go there primarily. I mean, if you look at NHS, Indian doctors form the backbone for NHS. Every 10th doctor in the UK is NHS. Look at the UK universities. Anywhere between 15 to 25% students in each British university is an Indian, So in a way, Indian students keep the British universities viable, Look at IT, anywhere between 30 to 40% of IT professionals working in UK are of Indian origin or Indians, So I think any walk of life you look at, scientists, academics, so I think by allowing a more liberal policy for visa, for immigration to Indians in UK's economy is making itself more internationally, globally competitive. And India is meeting UK's skill deficit in multiple areas in a very, very substantive way. So I don't see it will be a dampener for the FTA at all. Because, as I said in my meeting with Liz Truss last year when she was not the Prime Minister, it was she was very committed and also committed to a more, I would say, not open, but a more free, immigration of Indians to the UK.
All right. So let's discuss the issue that was raised by Suella Braverman of overstaying, the Indians who overstay. And what has been the response from the Indian side? Let's listen into the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson on that.
Whenever there's an Indian citizen abroad, we always strongly encourage legal migration, and if they need to come back, they will come back. But yes, there is a process for that, to have people come back and establish the identity and other elements.
Nick, is this an issue that the UK, appreciates that identity has to be ascertained? Because the Indian side's concern has been, and when this issue came up in 2018, that there are about 1 lakh Indian citizens who are living or have overstayed their visit there in visa there in the UK. The Indian side has concerns about their identity. They felt that many people from this entire subcontinent introduce themselves as Indians, whereas they are not. Is this point of identity or identifying whether they are really Indians or not something that the UK appreciates, that needs to be done, the due process needs to be followed?
Well, frankly, I simply don't know, but I would say it's an understandable point to be made. I mean, India doesn't want to have deported citizens who are not, in fact, citizens of India. So it's fairly natural to assume that that's part of the checking process. I don't know whether this is an obstacle, as you're rather implying. You've quoted the Indian High Commission here as saying, it's all on board. It'll happen, provided only that we can have a check. And I presume the British will be saying, yes, check identity, but that's as far as it goes. It's not really for you to assess the validity of the visa or the non-validity of the visa. So I can only say that I would have thought that's a fairly natural condition to build into things. Let me just go back to your substantial question, because your other contributors seem to be arguing that Liz Truss is perfectly well aware of the deadline and the need to have a free trade agreement. I don't disagree with that for one moment. All I'm asking you to reflect on is the fact that if you'd been asking me the questions 2 days ago, I would have said there's a big question mark over whether Liz Truss will still be Prime Minister by Diwali. I mean, that is how on the border is our political situation. Now, I think we've stabilized a little bit, and I'm inclined to think that she will last weeks, if not months. But it was really touch and go at the beginning of this week. So that's really where my reservation about the whole prospect comes. Now, if she's had a chance to look in her diary ahead, she will see that there is possibly penciled in a visit by the Indian Prime Minister, which I believe is being speculated. And if she looks a little bit further, she will see that she is likely to encounter the Indian Prime Minister at the G20 meeting in Bali in the middle of next month. So it's not so much that she's avoiding the issue or escaping the prospect of meeting the Indian Prime Minister and signing a deal. It's simply that she's had so much on her plate in the last few days, or last 4 weeks, I should say, that it is not top of her agenda. And possibly the fact that Suella Braverman has appeared to put a reservation in the way, that might focus her attention now that she's back from Europe to get it. So, yes, I'm inclined to the view that provided she stays in office, I don't see a problem. A deal will happen, possibly by Diwali.
Okay. Okay, Diwali is not too far away, Ashok Sajjanhar. Would you say that issues like mobility, migration and other issues that are cropping up right now can be work in progress while the two sides can go ahead and have a trade deal in the interim?
You know, Maha, what really happens when these discussions take place is, what we say, that there is an early harvest, that
Yes.
there are areas where we have, let's say, 80%, 90%, where there is agreement and, you take care of that. And the last 10%, which are the real sensitive issues, whether it is, mentioned automobiles, you mentioned, if it is Scotch whiskey or if it is some of the other issues that are really the stumbling block, IPRs or geographical indications of origin. Some of these issues might be stumbling blocks. You say, okay, we will continue to work on them, but we sort of, go ahead with certain areas where there is going to be an immediate impact as far as enhancing trade is concerned and bringing the two sides together. So I think it is a good message that is going out to the world. And it is also, has a positive impact as far as bilateral trade in services, and both sides need it. Meaning in this turmoil and turbulence that we have, whether it is with COVID-19 or Russia-Ukraine conflict, I think both sides need, an FTA. And India, for the United Kingdom, particularly after it has moved out of the European Union, I think it is very important because India is now fifth largest economy, $3.5 trillion economy, 7% GDP growth. I don't think it will get it anywhere. And its negotiations with the US, I think they are on the back burner somewhere. Nothing is going to happen. So there is no better prospect for the United Kingdom than India. Okay. And India has done Australia, India has done UAE. And I think going forward in a substantive way, with the United Kingdom would also be good for India.
Okay. Jayant, I think Adarsh and you both mentioned about the large number of Indian students who are going to study in the UK, also boosting in some sense the economy because they are paying up a huge fees. Now, would you say then that the point that is being raised about mobility is not so much for students because they are getting in that money as well, but more for them staying later on and perhaps taking away jobs? And we've heard this refrain from even the US during the Donald Trump regime, that a lot of people from the Indian subcontinent and Indians specifically tend to take away jobs. That's what Donald Trump used to say about the Indians. These are skilled workers. These are jobs that these countries cannot fill. However, still the sentiment largely is that these jobs go away to the others. Is that the sentiment that you sense as well?
See, today's world, can't create artificial barriers like nationality and things like that. Whosoever is the best person for a given job would get the job eventually. If it would not get directly through immigration route, through a back office route or whatever it is. So I think UK should not even attempt to stop that process at all or slow that process at all. I mean, and the fact is, the things are not bad on the ground. If you look at 45% of all work visas that UK is issuing is to Indians. Almost half the visas go to Indians, because Indians are skilled in multiple areas, in academics, in IT, in medicine, in every walk of life, So I think one thing is very clear: if the law does not allow Indian students to stay in UK and take up jobs beyond a certain period, because now the rules have changed, I think for 1 or 2 years, you are allowed, if you've done your master's or bachelor's, you're allowed to work there. So beyond that, if somebody wants to work, then there's a different process of a company applying for a work permit and things like that. So things have to happen on a legal course. Any Indian who violates that, is not the right thing at all. And as the government, as the Indian High Commissioner to UK has said very clearly, law will take its own course. But the fact is, just because there are a few aberrations here or there, one should not, a country as important as UK should not lose the bigger picture of how people from India do a huge amount of value add to a country like UK in different walks of life. Not just address the talent deficit, but also, meet the cost arbitrage requirements and things like that, and therefore UK economy globally more competitive, Just because there are a few irritants here and there, one should not lose the sight of the big picture.
All right. All right. Adarsh, the number of students perhaps going back to the UK for studies has slightly gone up after they opened up for working after studying there as well. Do you see that trend? And do you see that creating some sort of discomfort on the other side?
Yes, the numbers are, quite unreal to see how, the UK numbers and Indian students are sort of increasingly going. I think there is a lot of artificial demand. My, a huge shout out to parents right now and students who are willing to go for masters, right, to make intelligent choice, right, because they are spending a lot of money as compared to a local student, and there might not be jobs for a lot of them, right? So if you are spending the money, make sure you are well researched, well read. And yeah, I mean, UK colleges and universities are spending a lot of money in India to recruit students, right? So, and they are going to the masses, right? The masses are right now today, thinking about taking international education. So I think there is a lot of air that, only the skilled students and skilled individuals should think about an abroad education. It's at and obviously, with the current corporate scenario, there is, we cannot forget that, recession could be a possibility. There are KPMG reports, and if you go through the employability, it's not easy to land a job. So one must do a detailed research before taking a step. And yeah, if you look at the numbers, we are looking at sending close to 200,000 students by next year, which is a very, very important part for UK's economy, for UK's growth, for UK to have skilled employees in across all areas, right? Whether it's corporate, it's, managerial positions, it's any kind of rate. So, what UK government needs to clearly identify is that they need us. They give us a due regard and, due respect. And obviously, the student is kept out of politics, honestly. And my huge shout out to parents and students and to figure out that, they must make a very informed decision before investing all their parents, hard-earned money or their own money, right, which they have sort of earned. Because, India, I think, has fairly a solid education infrastructure upcoming, right? So even as a consultant, right, I would say that look at your own country before you sort of take a leap into the next country's dimension, because you can, be a part of our growth factor, right? So we should not just lose talent to, countries in the UK and, abroad education overall.
All right.
We should also retain talent in India. India has a lot to say right now.
That's a bit of a reality check there for a lot of students who aspire to study abroad. Others saying that skilled students who then go into a profession are definitely more required by any country than any other soft professional skill. Nick, I want to come to you finally, and because we have the last 2 minutes left, I want to understand from you, when Suella Braverman referred to Brexit and the vote on Brexit not being for some sort of open borders, did she allude to jobs being taken away by others?
Well, again, I can't tell you, I'm not sure I heard that speech, but let me try to portray Britain's policy towards immigration at the moment. Restrictions came in after Brexit on European visitors. They can still come, but they have to get a work permit if they want to stay for any length of time. Britain has quite a problem at the moment with people sailing in small boats across the English Channel. And the perhaps priority concern of Suella Braverman is to try to reach agreement with France to try and stop that, or indeed to return them to France. So those are the top priorities. But you're right to imply that when Brexit happened, Britain had this policy of becoming a global power and doing deals, be they trade deals, with much of the rest of the world. We'd lost our major trading partner. Well, we hadn't lost a partner, but we'd changed the relationship with our major trading partner of the European Union. And we wanted to do big business with all the other major trading partners around the world, including India. So that was the focus of attention. I rather suspect that that the Home Secretary is a little bit unaware of the significance of the detail of the Indian trade deal, the proposed Indian trade deal, and she possibly hasn't examined the detail about visas and indeed the overstaying conditions. And you know, she may be taking one course, and the Prime Minister, who hasn't spoken on this subject lately, may be taking another course. But there's no doubt who's in charge. Provided Liz Truss stays in power, she's the boss. She's the boss. So her view will prevail. So I don't think you should be too upset if the Home Secretary appears to be putting the kibosh on the envisaged trade deal.
Right.
Again, with that one proviso, provided Liz Truss stays in power till Diwali, I think there's every chance that she will knock heads together, if that's what's needed, and make sure the trade deal happens, because she's certainly committed to it.
All right. So it's interesting that when Boris Johnson was here in India earlier this year, a question was asked by a British journalist as to whether he will be Prime Minister till Diwali, and he said yes. And now you're raising questions about Liz Truss staying in the seat till Diwali. Many thanks to all four of you for joining us here on the discussion. That's all that we have for you this evening.